Welcome back to another episode of the Here We Go podcast. Back with Lowry again. Sir, how you doing on this fine evening?
I'm all right. You?
Doing pretty good, doing pretty good. I like the background this time. You changed up your scenery a bit there. I
Yeah,
like it.
got to a different room because nobody else is home today, so didn't have to do it in my office.
I love it. I love it. It's a sweet background going there.
The
Um,
picture right here is the final game at Three Rivers, and if you look very, very, very closely in the 50-yard line and the 11 rows back, is me and my future wife at that time.
that's pretty awesome.
Yes,
That's a special collection item right there.
I think so.
I love it. That's a good one. So obviously here today we're going to be talking about the Bengals game. We're going to do some recap on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the division outlook here, and then kind of touch base on some of the injuries, both from what we've already had dealing with and also what we came away with that game with. So I'm going to dive right into the Bengals game, obviously. So I think the most surprising part of that game was. You were way closer on the predictions for the scores than I was. Went a little differently than both of us thought, actually.
Yep.
Offensive explosion in this one, 520 yards of offense. What did you take away as you were watching that unfold?
I was not surprised that the Bengals defense let up as many. I was just surprised that it happened so fast. But the fact that it started off so ugly on that first, forced the Bengals to punt, we're like, all right, here we go. We stopped them from one drive. That's all we needed. And we gave it so fast, so back. I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those days. So after that, I was just like, oh, wow, we could. I mean, it was unbelievable after that. How
Yeah,
fast paced, how fluid everything moved compared to how it looked Thursday night. It didn't seem like we were, even when we had Fields come in, there wasn't that, like we talked about that other day, there wasn't that waiting for people to get in and out of the huddle, like, oh my god, we're missing people moments that we had
right.
that week.
Yeah, it seemed a lot crisper. Honestly, I think the reason that I had predicted the scores to be lower than what it turned out to be, I just didn't think we were going to try to play that game with them. I didn't expect to come out throwing and then continue throwing, and then we started like sprinkling the run game in. But a lot of the run game really was built off of the pass game, which I just thought you're not going to want to trade blows with Joe Burrow in that offense. Even though their defense was bad, I just thought they were be a little more conservative. So honestly, for me, it was a breath of fresh air just seeing that this offense came out and tried to attack what they knew was a superior defense. So for me, I thought that's kind of what I found interesting out of everything that kind of unfolded in that game.
Yeah.
Uh,
I liked watching Najee and Warren get looks in the passing game and the way they were used in the passing game. It wasn't as okay, we're using him as the check down, like he was open in the middle, it went right to him, and that opened up, I think, a lot more of the running. Like we were talking about, they didn't have those guys backing that 5 to 10 yards up, but by using the running backs, I think it did open up that running later on.
it did, and early on, I think you saw a lot of attempts at screens, trying to slow down Hendrickson and obviously the rest of that group. It was Hubbard. It was like Hubbard didn't even show up. Like, did he record a stat? Because I didn't really notice him in this one, which I
No,
found very very interesting. But I don't know. I just obviously the plan was to try to slow down Hendrickson, and he was getting upfield at times, and it played right into the favor of our offense with those screen passes and even just the dump passes to Najee and Warren, and I think one of them went to Patterson. And then it really just kind of opened the rest of the game up from there. It was I thought a great game call both between Arthur Smith and Russ checking at the line. It
were
seemed
you
like they just had their number.
Were you surprised that when Harris went out, I think it was like in the first quarter or whatever, they went like when he was when the turkey got him, when they went to
Yes,
Cordell Patterson versus Warren. Like I
I
was kind of
was
surprised that they didn't go to Warren, so I was wondering what you thought.
I was very surprised by that, and I'm not sure what to make of it right now, because I would have thought you would have gone Jalen Warren more. I know Jalen's been kind of banged up, but so has Patterson, honestly. So I wasn't sure. Is there anything lingering? And then all of a sudden, like when you see that he catches that one pass off to the right side there, and he takes off downfield, I'm like, he looks fine. It's
Yeah,
not that. I wasn't sure what to quite make of that, but Arthur Smith loves Patterson.
yep.
Obviously, they have a relationship going back. I don't know. It was pretty fascinating that I picked up on that too. I just wasn't sure what to make of it. So, what did
I,
you think?
I thought for sure when Harris went out, I'm like, all right, here comes all the see, told you Warren should be the starter moments, even though Harris looked
Mm,
great moving down the field. And then Patterson
yes.
came in. I'm like, Patterson did well. This isn't a knock on Patterson. I was just kind of like, well, where's Warren? I mean, everybody talks about Warren should be the bell cow over Harris, and it still felt like, okay, are we just like, well, we don't really need him right now. Maybe we're just letting him still kind of get rest as much as possible, or they're just using Cordero and Patterson in a certain way. I don't know. I was kind of confused by it, but it worked. They were still moving the ball, so I guess I can't complain about it. I was just kind of like wasn't expecting that.
The only other thing I can think of possibly, we talked a lot in the pregame show about them being soft up the middle. Patterson's a bigger body guy. Maybe they thought he could kind of pound up through the middle a little easier than Warren, but I think Warren runs pretty well between the
Yeah.
tackles too. But they've used him this year more outside than between the tackles. So I don't know if maybe it's just like a mindset. I mean, they each only had 3 carries. It wasn't like it ended up being a massive, difference. Najee was obviously the guy. He had 16. No one else had more than 3. So I don't know. It was kind of interesting. I like the question that you posed there, but I don't know what to make of it,
It
honestly.
was just weird that was like I said, it was the first one they went to. I thought
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yep, for sure. So like we talked about, Russ was cooking, 29 of 38, 414 yards, 3 touchdowns. That kind of controversial interception that goes for pick six. Hit 10 different receivers.
Yep.
What did you think about Russ's play overall in this game?
I think it was very. I don't want to say 180 because that's not, I guess, the right terminology, but it looked so much better this week than Thursday. He looked like he felt the flow of the game better. Um, I don't know if it's just because the pressure wasn't right on him, like he felt like he could move. Maybe I don't know, but he looked like more okay. Fine, if you're not open, I'm just going to move on. And he was free to move. He was moving around. He passed the ball to guys who were open. He didn't look like, okay, like he wasn't a forced ball to George Pickens moment in that game. There wasn't a
Right.
moment where I'm like, oh my God, he's just trying to get the ball to George. It was like, oh, wow, he's hitting everybody. Like I could have
Right.
sworn I got a pass in the game at one point.
Had one
So
itch in the hands, huh?
yeah.
You know what was interesting to me? Everybody but Mike Williams seemed to have gotten involved in that game. Like even down to Connor Hayward getting the onside kick. Like I felt like anybody who could catch a pass in this game was catching a pass, but no Mike Williams still.
Hey,
Um,
but at least he posted the whole Instagram. Screw it, we're winning.
we're winning.
So yeah, he's
Yep.
happy to be out of that other 3 ring circus.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I picked up from Russ that I really liked is using the middle of the field a bit more. He's not been doing that. It's not something he's known for. Our offense as a whole hasn't done that since Ben has been a quarterback here. So, I thought it really opened up to me outside of those, little check down dump passes to Najee and them in the middle. But I thought the play with Pickens hitting that crosser route, I thought that's kind of what opened up the middle of the field game. I thought we saw more of that getting attacked as that game went on after that pass reception. Um, Evaluating him from maybe seeing something different, you know, to me that was the thing that jumped out was, we saw Muth finally. Muth finally comes along, right? Like he has a big game. Um, and that ball that he threw Muth rolling out of the pocket, and as he's rolling
Sidearm.
hard, yeah, I mean that's what it was like across the bar. It's almost like playing playing second base, and he's like turning the body to like get the throw down to first base. Like I was like, okay, Russ, he's still got a little zip back in there, so I liked it.
That was all muscle memory, man. As soon as he got there and he just winged that thing in there, I loved watching that. It was a great play. Same with the Austin play. Just
Yeah,
watching the zip on those things. Some of the like, there's been times with the moon ball with him where I'm like, oh, he needs to get that further. And this is why I question about the whole long term deal with him, the signing the contract, because I keep like, it needs to go a little further. He seems to short him. But then you see those
yeah,
passes that he has like to Muth and to Austin, and it's like, but there it is. There's that arm strength. I'm like, oh, you can see those moments where it's like, where it's there. I
yeah.
just want to see it just a little bit more on the deep, deep balls. But
Do
man,
you do you see him, since you brought up Calvin Austin? Do you see him using Calvin Austin more like he used Tyler Lockett when he was in Seattle?
I think he wants to.
It seems like, because a lot of those routes that Lockett ran. Now he's not doing a lot of the sideline stuff with Cal yet that he would do with Lockett, but Lockett hit a lot of those like seam routes exactly like what he's hitting with Calvin Austin right now. So there's definitely a comparison I think to be made there.
But I think
Not that
Lockett was
Calvin
a little
Austin
bit.
is Lockett,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna say Lockett's a little bit taller
yeah,
than Austin. Austin's a little bit faster. Lockett, not knocking Austin because we just have never seen him get this many looks ever.
yeah,
But Lockett definitely had the better hands, right? Like, I got to give
yeah.
that to
Oh
him
yeah,
right now. But
yeah, for
watching
sure.
Austin take a couple of those hits this weekend, I was just like, wow. I never deemed him as a tough wide receiver. Never thought he was soft, but I was just like, man, he took those hits.
He was
And
getting punished.
yeah,
I don't think he's Tyler Lockett, and I'm not trying to compare the two. I
right.
just think the utilization between the two, the way Russ is using him, it reminds me of how he utilized Tyler Lockett, which is interesting. And he seems to have a faith in him right now. Like he's not afraid to go to him in situations. You can see where like even that ball that he throws downfield, the linebacker was obviously bearing down on Calvin and gets there before the ball. But Russ trusted him to try to make that throw because there's also a
Huh?
couple defenders behind him on that play where if that ball gets tipped up in the air, it's trouble. So
I'll, I'll
there's trust there.
I'll say this one thing about watching Russ from Pittsburgh, right? Because we didn't really see all of him off field stuff in Seattle or Denver. I don't think there's a person on the field he doesn't trust. Like if Broderick Jones ran a route, he'd trust him to catch the pass. I mean, that just seems to be the type of person that Russ seems to be like, okay, dude, you're gonna run a route. I automatically will trust whoever it is running the route.
Yeah,
And you see that, especially like you said with Austin, just the faith that he's like, all right, I'm gonna put it out there. I know you're gonna get open. I trust you to get it. Like, and you can
right.
see that trust that he puts in those guys has built up those plays. I mean, and I'm sure Williams will get it, but Skrzykowski was out there, and I mean, I love watching him out there. I'm sorry, the Vaughn, and I like watching Scotty, but there's the guy. That's the guy I want to see as the third wide receiver with Austin and Pickens right now, and Williams when he's out there is the guy who's going to sit there and do all that dirty work. And he frustrated, what was it?
Stone.
Yeah, and got the free penalty on him. I'm like, that's awesome. I love watching that.
Yeah. Do you see him lay Geno Stone out in the end zone?
I loved it. It was
Naughty
great.
run.
He flew like 5 yards into the end zone. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was good stuff. Najee actually had a good game too. I think he 125 yards total from the scrimmage. He had the touchdown run.
Imagine if he
He
didn't go
got
to Fire Moose for turkey or for
yes,
pie.
it could have been 200 yards. But I thought Najee had a really good game in this one too. Is it obvious that he's just the guy right now? Like, is the running back room like we talked about this earlier with the two guys only getting 6 carries and he gets 16. I mean, is Najee just the bell cow now? Or are we still going to do by a committee?
I think I want to see bell cow. I've said that for a long time. So I guess I'm not impartial. I am partial.
Yes.
So I'm not exactly the best person to ask for that. I'm not against using it. I wouldn't mind seeing 16, 10, and 3 with
Yeah.
Warren getting 10. Um, but this time of year, this is why I want to see starting Najee getting that 16 carries. I want to see feeding the hot hand. If let's say that game would have started and Harris had 5 carries for 5 yards, and Warren came in and ran 3 carries for 30. Give Warren the rest of the workload. I am
Mhm.
all for riding the hot hand, but when you do that, that's the bell cow for the game until somebody says, okay, we're going to stop that guy. Just figure out one guy and run him like that. I thought that game plan on Sunday was great with how they utilized, like, oh, here, especially on that first drive until he got tired. It was like, okay, Harris, you're open. We're just going to keep giving you the ball. They are not stopping you.
Yes. Yeah. I was an advocate to pay Najee, like not just pick up the 5th-year option, but I actually advocated to pay Najee in
Would
the
have been
offseason
cheaper.
because I like him. I've always liked him. I thought we were never really truly seeing what he could be capable of, and that's obviously happening right now because we're starting to see the first round running back coming out that we drafted all those years ago. He just never had the offensive line. The biggest knock against him has always been the yards per carry, and I'm like, yes, he's getting 3.4 or whatever it was yards per carry on his career, but he's getting hit 3 yards
2 yards
in the
back.
backfield. So you're averaging 5 yards a carry. And if you like talk about where he's getting actually making his first contact, I was always an advocate for Najee, and I like Jalen Warren. I think he's a great change of pace back. And I've said this too. I've never been confident that he was built to take a workload.
Not
He's a
at all.
great change of pace guy, right?
I don't think
That's
he's a
just
25 carry workload.
no, I don't either. He's very much, and the younger audiences won't remember it, but he's very much the Willie Parker of the
Whoa,
offense. I
hold on.
mean,
Hold
Bettis
on
was
there.
the big guy, and he did the bruising, and Willie would get a lot of the benefit. Now, obviously, that changed, once he was really kind of Bettis was like getting towards his retirement year. But
Well,
I,
when we
I,
when we talked about Willie, you look at what he did, and Willie was a perfectly fine workhorse back until Tomlin's famous, we're gonna run him till the wheels fell off. Then he broke his leg, and that's what kind of killed that whole thing. And that's why, like that first year of Najee getting 380 carries or something like that was crazy. I'm like, we
yeah,
can't do that. He needs another back, especially with how bad that offensive line was. So that's why it's like perfect. These two are perfect together. You sign them, you keep them together. You do exactly what Detroit has done with Montgomery and Gibbs.
yep,
Granted, neither one of them are Gibbs. Not knocking the explosiveness that Gibbs has, but there you go. You use them the same way. Perfect. You can have a two-back committee. Look
yep.
at them. I think they made a mistake by not paying him at the 5th year, giving him a long-term deal. At that point, James
That
Conner
makes
just
sense.
got what 19 million for 2 years. That's the bottom line right there. That's the lowest you can pay Najee because no team's going to go like if he hits that open market, Dallas is not going to make the same mistake they made with Derrick Henry. They're going to
Um,
go pay him.
I'd be shocked if Najee Harris doesn't get $12 million
I could see
a
that from
year, not a total
right.
contract. I'm talking a year. I think he's as young as he is and as durable as he's been, and he doesn't fumble. And now teams are going to see what he's doing this year behind a better, and we're not even I think we're a good run blocking offensive line now. Maybe as we're getting to this point of the season, I think you can consider us a good, pretty good, maybe good offensive line run blocking. Imagine that dude in Philadelphia. Like he's
Yeah.
not going to put up Saquon numbers, but he's going to be putting up some crazy numbers. Like,
And before anybody asks, we're not saying he's going to Philly because they already got their
no,
back.
yeah,
But
I,
example
I,
taken, yes.
yeah, I just think that like it's amazing what a running back can do with a good offensive line. He's not had that, and I think he's gotten an unfair rap. And I just can't see a way where we do pay him at this point. I think that ship has sailed because you're gonna have to probably. I think they're gonna pay Russ. Honestly, I think that's pretty abundant right now, abundantly clear rather. But I don't think there's a way they're gonna find a way to pay Najee. So
I think, unlike my stance with Russ, I can see Najee being like, you know what? I like where I am. I like the team. I like the organization. If you meet me at that 10 million mark, okay, I'll be fine. As long
do you
as
think the team would pay 10 million? Because here's the other thing. I think, and I don't think this is just like happenstance rumor, like fun to talk about stuff. I think they're going to make a run at T Higgins. Like everything they got, make a run at T. Higgins.
I hope not.
I think they will.
I like T. Higgins. I do. I wouldn't mind having him on the team. I just don't want to take. I don't want to see all the money dumped into the wide receiver. Like everybody's like, oh, running backs are a dime a dozen. At the same point, aren't we the same people that say you can get a wide receiver in any round?
Oh, I've said that. I think that's what's going to happen personally. I'm not saying we necessarily should go after T. I just think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to go all in.
I think they tried to course correct after the Ayuk deal, and maybe they do that. I hope they don't. Just from a money perspective, not from a talent perspective. Back to you asking if I think they'd go 10 million for Naj. I think that's what I'm saying though, is like Najee will be like, hey, I'll take 10 million to stay with you guys. Now the team might be like, okay, well, we see what you finally can do with an offensive line and offensive coach. Maybe they'll come up. But if he goes to the free agent market, I can see a team like Dallas trying to be like, man, we came under attack from all these other people, so now we're going to overspend. A team like Raiders, who struggled this year with their horrible running team, being like, okay, we need to course correct. I can see some team paying that 12.5 to just throw money at him and hope he comes.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping he doesn't. I hope the team comes up. I hope they can work a deal. I know everybody says they won't, but I'm stupid like that. I was hoping that they would work a deal with Juju. That didn't happen. We'll see. I also think that he's a great guy in the locker room.
He is, and it's interesting. I made a post. I think it was I forget who I posted to, Leanne Lewin maybe or something like that. She had an article about Najee and being upset about, or no, not an article. I think she had a post out there being upset about Najee if he leaves, and I just. It's hard for the team to admit like you passed up the 5th-year option and the price tag that would have been at, and then turn around and pay. But how did we get so far from like putting a C on this dude's chest in year 2, so that all of a sudden like we're not even willing to pick up a 5th-year option on him? That part was so weird to me.
Yeah.
That like you believe so much in this guy as a franchise that you made him a captain for the Steelers. Whether you're a fan or not, you have to acknowledge we are one of the like premier franchises in the NFL. We're run a certain way. We don't really adapt and follow a lot of trends, and we kind of do our own thing and have our own rules. And how do you go from that guy gets a C to like not even a 5th-year option picked up? It's just so baffling to me.
It's baffling to me in a way about the 5th year. The C thing, it's kind of like, okay, well, the year he got it, who else was on the team? And then it's like, okay, now we need to give it to our, up and coming quarterback. Oh, that was a mistake. Well, now we got Russ. Russ clearly is a leader, so it's like,
yeah.
So it's like, I think the 5th year was just kind of like at 6 point. I think it was like 6.7 at that time.
Yeah.
So it's like now it's going to be like 9 point something, 8 point something if he would get a 5th-year option. I know it's not, but I mean this next 5th-year option for a running back would be that. It's like you certain things. They're going to have to pay George. The question always will go back to, and this is how I've defended this draft. Everybody's like, they made a mistake. They should have picked Humphrey instead of Naj. No, they should have picked Naj, and they still had Humphrey on the board.
Yeah.
So the question was Muth. Well, they picked Muth. Now they re-signed Muth. So the question will always go back to, well, should they have signed Najee and tried Muth at the end of the season? He's been great. I wonder what the contract numbers would have looked like at the end of this year compared to what Najee's numbers are going to look like at the end of this year.
Yeah, I agree. Getting back to the Bengals game, I felt like the offensive line really started to take control a little bit in that game. They were really kind of imposing their will. I felt like they really got under the skin of the Bengals defenders a lot. How are you evaluating the offensive line now, especially compared to where we were earlier in the season?
I'm giving them a C still. It's going to take a lot for me to get off that C, just because a lot of what they've done, great protecting, a lot of some, great short passes, quick passes. I just need to see more from that running game to get it above that. So we'll see what happens when as the year goes. What I like, and I'll pound this until I'm blue in the face, and I know you commented on it. Watching George Pickens go to Broderick Jones, who at the beginning of the year at one point got a penalty and was irate. He wanted to fight guys on the other side of the field, and now he's the calming influence to George Pickens. That was awesome to me because I was just like, wow, that's the guy that's calling him down. I'm like, I would expect like Fryermuth or Harris to be out there being like, dude, we got you, just it's fine. But it was like Jones, like, oh, dude, don't worry about it. We'll get him on the next play. It was like,
Yeah.
I loved seeing that. I loved where this offensive line is, and this is why I would give this group an A over everything. 2 years ago, they weren't even 3 years ago with Ben still there. They weren't even helping the quarterback off the ground at that time. I remember that being a big story. Like, man, Ben's getting tackled and nobody's even bothering to turn around and pick him up. Nobody's defending him. And now you got
Right.
guys defending their quarterbacks and picking them up off the ground. I love the mentality of the line. Now they just need to get that execution down.
Yeah. I think Zach Frazier is a star in the making. I actually think he's one of the probably at least top 10 centers in the NFL right now. He could arguably be higher than that. I think he's been fantastic all year for a rookie. We're this late in the season. He's still having a pretty solid year. Struggled against Myles Garrett, obviously, but like being
Who
left
doesn't?
one-on-one against one of the best defensive players in the NFL, what do you expect? Like he's not Trent Williams. Like you shouldn't be leaving that guy one-on-one. Sorry. As good as Dan's played this year, he's not Trent Williams. You don't leave him one-on-one with that guy. But he's still been playing well. I felt like you brought up Broderick Jones. I don't think anybody needed the bye week more than Broderick Jones, and I don't think I've ever seen a player use the bye week as effectively as Broderick Jones. He's been pretty dang good since that bye week. I mean, the last 3 weeks especially, he's played fantastic. How do you feel about him right now?
I think his issue to me has always been more about his mentality, like keeping himself in control, like just being in the moment versus allowing that whole like something bad happens and then the next play gets worse and the next play gets worse. We saw that, I think it was like week 3 or 4 where it was just one bet, like he had the penalty, the next play was another penalty, and then they were like, all right, you're out. Like it was like the 4th one in a row. So I think he's kind of had that breather. He's kind of gotten settled in. And we're going to have a conversation at the end of the season where now what are we doing with Broderick Jones? We're going to try to move him back to the left tackle. Is he staying at right tackle? And that's going to screw up everything again. But I love.
What would you do right now?
I'm leaving him at right.
I think I would too at this point. He said he doesn't care. The fan base seems to care, but Falatanu is every bit of the better pass protector. We got one game from him, so the sample size is absolutely nothing. But in that one sample size, he looked fantastic.
Yeah.
He was doing really well in pass protection. He had did he give up one sack in that game? I think it was I can't remember now, but he looked the part. He acted the part, and that was his first game as a rookie. Like, what else do you expect from him? Like, I think he moves the left tackle. I think you keep Broderick Jones at the right side. Broderick has been a road grader as a run blocker the last 3 games.
Yeah.
Falatanu's not that. He has a mean streak to him, but he can't be that road grader where he just physically imposes his will on guys. I mean, there's a play Najee does not run off the right side. He runs kind of between, I think, the A gap on the right side of Frazier, I think is where it started. Broderick Jones is 12 yards downfield just throwing dudes.
Yep.
Like there's a DB on this side. He throws that dude. Here comes a linebacker. He throws this dude. And then like he finishes on top of another DB. I'm like, where has this guy been all season? Like,
right.
Broderick Jones is out there just beating people up. And I was loving every second of it. And I love where he's at right now.
Before the season started, I said, you need to make Jones your left tackle. He was drafted as your left tackle. He needs to be there. He has to find that spot. You let Fanu play your right tackle. Yeah. But now that Jones has now been to the right tackle for 2 years, okay, let's try Fanu at left and see what happens. And if something doesn't work, then we'll figure that switch out. But right now, in my head, that's how you start training camp. And that's only if, whatever happens with Dan Moore, which I think you're going to have to try maybe to see if you can bring him back for it. I don't know if you can anymore. But
You want to know
we'll
what I
talk about
saw his number is right now?
15, 25,
No, not
35.
quite 25.
Oh,
18 million.
yeah. Think about this, fans. Everybody out there was like, we need when Broderick got drafted, the day he got drafted, everybody's like, trade him, he sucks. Then Fontenot got drafted, trade him, he sucks. Now we're like, let's pay this guy $18 million.
Yeah. It's crazy. And honestly, think about how screwed we'd be right now if he wasn't on the team, because if we would have lost Fautanu, Broderick Jones was struggling the way he was struggling. And then on top of that, you didn't have Dylan Cook, who was your backup at the time. He was on IR. Calvin Anderson? He played one play in which week was it? Was that the Colts game? He came in, had one play, and Russ just gets absolutely destroyed because the guy blew right past him. Like, if you didn't have Dan Moore Jr. on this team, we'd be in a much different position right now than where we are. So that's credit to him if you're asking me. I really like what I've seen from him so far. Larry might be having some connection issues right now, so I'm going to move forward with a couple things here. Isaac Seumalo still seems to be really quite underrated in the way that he's being evaluated right now. I think he's been really, really strong in the run game. I think he's done a fairly decent job in the pass game.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you now. You're back.
Yeah,
Can't see you, but I
lost
can
power.
hear you. You lost your power?
Yep.
All right, that's no problem. That's no problem. Yeah, I talked a little bit about just finishing up my point on Dan Moore and then Isaac Seumalo. But obviously the offense was cooking in this game. Defensively, though, we couldn't slow down Joe Burrow. Any concerns with the defense right now moving forward?
Yep. But not necessarily just because of Joe. I mean, he was cooking every other team out there. So this isn't the first, right?
Right.
But we go back to that secondary concerns, so we made enough stops on defense. We got exactly what we needed from the pressure on him. We just got to hope that, we're good enough in that secondary when we get those other teams now. We have to continue. We got Alex Highsmith back,
Yeah.
Hopefully this is the start of the three-headed monster. I think I asked you this. No, I think I asked Corza, Alex
Zora?
Is there a chance that you can play Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, and Wilson at one point and see what happens in the linebacking if you needed to?
I would say yeah. I mean, to me, I think you could. I think you could. Honestly, I would probably put Herbig in the middle, kind of in a linebacker spot in the middle of the field there, and bring kind of that pressure look up the middle, because he's pretty good in pass coverage, in my opinion. We've seen him do it a little bit already this year. I know that he did there was one in the preseason. I remember. I cannot remember if they were playing their starting offensive line or if it was a backup offensive line at the time now, if I'm being honest. But he did this delay blitz, and he shot through the middle in the A gap so fast that by the time the guard realized he was coming, he was gone. He was already past him. And I think that's something he can bring to the table. And then you still have Highsmith and TJ coming off the edge that everybody knows how lethal those two guys are. So Peyton Wilson's going to be more of your coverage guy, but honestly, he's a pretty good blitzer too. We haven't seen a ton of it yet in the NFL, but he's blitzed really well in college, and we've seen him on a couple blitzes so far in the NFL, but just not enough. What do you think?
I would like to see I'd like to see that as a package every so often, kind of reminiscent of the Chad Brown, Greg Lloyd, Kevin Green, Levon Kirkland type of deal where you can kind of drop any of them into coverage and blitz any of them and just keep everybody kind of off guard. Something that I don't think outside of Roberts, I haven't seen much of our inside linebackers blitz at a very high rate of success.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I've not charted that. That's just my naked eye telling me. So it'd be interesting. I don't think they would do that because they seem to be against kind of moving Herbig around like that. But I hope it'd be kind of nice to see like against like a Lamar Jackson or a Mahomes who has that ability to kind of run all over the field just every so often to put a package out there like that just to mess with their heads.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would do it in this Cleveland game because I feel like all things at even conditions, I think we should be able to beat Cleveland at home pretty easily, especially since we did get beat once. I think the team's going to be motivated to win this game, but it could be a package that you see maybe to try to sweep Baltimore and further take control of the division. It could be a package you definitely see in that Kansas City game. And honestly, I would use it at times in the Philly game too. I mean, when you play against these teams that are going to be the cream of the crop teams, you've got to bring some different looks than what you've done all year. And that's when I think I would use that type of a package.
If we can, if the Steelers can beat Cleveland, right? Then I think like, okay, well, you don't need necessarily to beat Philly. You just need to beat Baltimore. That's the only thing you need. So that's the game where, okay, well, if I want to try something new on defense, that's the game I'm going to try.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that against them because if it works there, I can implement it wherever. But if it doesn't, and I happen to lose to Philly, I still have Kansas City and Baltimore games where I can earn back that loss without it being a damage.
I think I saw something out there that said if we beat Cleveland and Baltimore, that we basically seal up the division.
Yep.
I think statistically that seals it up for us. So I think that's something that's obviously huge because it's back-to-back weeks where you're going to be seeing both these two teams, but big opportunity on the table. So let me ask you this: are you concerned about Joey Porter Jr. and his penalties?
No, I've been getting yelled at about that since last year during the preseason or mini camp, and I'm like, man, he's got his hands all over that. They're going to call it, and everybody's like, no, officials will never call that. And now fast forward to this year, and I'm like, there you go. It's
Yeah.
My concern with him has always been that Eli Apple style of play. That it's going to be great. There's going to be moments, but there's going to be moments where you're going to have to accept if you're going to live with the penalties or not. And you sit there and say, well, they're big body wide receivers, and he's just trying to be as physical as they are. But after the third penalty of that game, you got to be like, all right, well, you have to adapt. You can blame the officials all you want, but you're holding, you're grabbing. You clearly know how they're calling it. So, the thing about it too with me, maybe I wouldn't be as angry of those penalties if he catches that INT that went lazily through his hands. I don't know. I shouldn't be a harper on that, but like when I saw Ike Taylor drop passes, it never looked like he oh well. But that one kind of was like he just was like not engaged in actually intercepting the pass. Like it was just kind of like to him. And then I guess I shouldn't run around. There's no thrown by bro that's not intended for me. Heck, I don't even know if I catch it if it was intended for me. But it was just kind of like I thought for sure the interception was right there in his hand. I was like, yeah, and I'm like, wow, he dropped that. Oh,
yep.
And if it was Ike Taylor, we would have ripped him and made fun of him. But JPJ, I didn't hear any complaints or anybody making jokes. It was just on to the next play.
I know. I actually, so I was one of the guys who didn't really think Joey was going to turn out to be a great corner because of the grabbing. Obviously I'm a big fan of the Big Ten, so I saw him quite a bit. Hey, you got your power back.
Yeah, everything's turned on now.
But I saw him a lot at Penn State, and I saw when he would try to play against Marvin Harrison Jr. and like how much he was just holding on, like at times for dear life. And I know Marvin was, obviously he was the first receiver off the board in that class, but I'm like, this is his play style though. Like this is not going to work. You get away with a lot more in the Big Ten than what you're going to get away with in the NFL. The NFL is called a lot more closely than the Big Ten is. Big Ten typically is more of a rough tumble type of conference. It's how it's always been. The refs understand that. They let these guys play a bit more, and the NFL is not like that. So you don't know what officials you're going to get week in and week out. They don't have conference. AFC North doesn't have their own officials. You're getting guys at random. So I was always a little concerned about that from his standpoint, but it's interesting because tell me if you see this, because this is where I've seen him struggle. When he's playing big receivers, that's when he's committing the penalties. Struggled against DK Metcalf last year, mightily, all game long. Committed penalties in that game too. Then
Devontae Adams.
This year, yeah, Devontae Adams. This year, he's got the big penalties against Denver, which is Cortland Sutton. He was locked up on Sutton quite a bit in that game. Washington, Terry McLaurin, who's not a big guy but plays very physical for a receiver, especially of his size. And then we saw this last game. T. Higgins is a big physical receiver. He's 6'4", 225 pounds. And it just feels like when Joey can't impose his will with these big guys, that he's like relying on like grabbing and like trying to slow them down in other ways. Have you noticed any of that, or am I just kind of like reading tea leaves?
No, I don't think I put it together until I think it was you or somebody else posted about that. But that's what I read. I saw it and I'm like, makes sense. It plays out that way.
Yeah.
There's games where he looks really good and he shuts down. There's games where they're going to call it and he gets physical. And it seems like those games are against those same wide receivers that are more physical. Like when it comes a physical game, I think there's a part of him, just like his dad. Okay, well, if you're going to push me, I'm going to push you right back.
Yeah. Oh,
and as a DB, you're going to get that call. And I understand, like he said, like, oh, the refs are trying to change my game. Well, it's the NFL game. Mel Blount was the focal point of that for, the whole change of that because he mugged receivers and he had to adapt. So he needs to kind of be careful because I just don't want to see that. It's kind of like the same thing with George Pickens. I don't want to see it in the fourth quarter of a tie game. Somebody takes a Joe Flacco, Torrey Smith chuck down the field just to draw the pass interference, and he's just chucking and arm barring somebody and gets the call.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I just want to make sure that it's a legit, like if the guy's past him and he pulls the guy down to stop a touchdown, it is what it is. But the amount, I think, 4 or 6 penalties he had this game?
Yeah, 6 flags and 4 accepted, yeah.
Yeah, it was just That's lot, insane. Man.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into, obviously, the Cleveland outlook here before the game. So I'll get into Jerry Jeudy because I do want to get into the discussion about Joey Porter Jr. and Jerry Jeudy because I think that one's going to be another potential for this same issue to pop up. Judy's a big boy, but we'll get into that later on. Let's talk about the division outlook a little bit. Obviously, we're 2 games up right now. We just talked about this. Beat Cleveland, beat Baltimore, and we're going to claim the division. How much do you think home field advantage means to this team and our chances in the playoffs?
So I'm always of the theory, never pay attention to the wins, always pay attention to losses. So we're 2.5 games up because we beat Baltimore. So right now they have to clear us.
That's true.
Right?
Yes.
That's what. So.
Yep. Might have lost Lowry again. For me personally, I'm catching you again. Are you here? I heard him shuffling around there for a minute. To me, there you are. Can you hear me
Okay.
okay?
Yeah. It's just with everything kicking back on now, my phone's trying to connect to the internet, so I turned it off so I didn't have any more issues with that.
I gotcha.
We might, the way it looks like is we might end up facing the Ravens, one way or another. I'd rather face them again for the third time. I'd rather face them at Acrisure versus having to
Yeah.
go to Baltimore. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, I'd rather have a home game. I don't think theoretically, I don't see us getting to a second seed. I think can Kansas City collapse, and maybe they're rather going to be the first seed or the third seed. I don't see them ending in the second. So
Yeah.
it would be great to get to the second, have 2 home games. I just don't see it. So at least get that first round. So it'd be nice to play Baltimore at home, play San Diego possibly at home. Maybe Miami come in the cold weather at home. Home field matters to me.
Yeah, I think it matters a lot too, especially for a franchise that's struggled so much in recent years in the postseason, that I think it would be a big win for us to get the home field crowd behind us in a year where it feels like things are a little bit differently this year. It's not the defense carrying us to the playoffs anymore this year like what we've seen in years past. Feels like the offense is an equal contributor to it right now. So
Yeah.
I think that home field advantage is going to go a long way for us, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Um, how do you feel about if you were evaluating playoff potential right now? Do you feel confident about winning a playoff game?
I do. I'd love to uh, play against Denver. I'd feel more confident in that game than playing a team for a third time.
Yeah.
Uh, I also would rather play a rookie quarterback. I know that rookie quarterback in Denver kind of goes back to people's nightmares of Tim Tebow, but I think it's a lot different. I'd rather
Yeah.
see that than seeing Justin Herbert come in there and seeing them with a Harbaugh coach team. So if I pick my teams, I'd rather see Denver with the rookie quarterback having to come into Pittsburgh, Russ finally being able to get that revenge game checked off his
Yep.
bucket list. I think that would be the icing on the season for me. Get that one playoff win, get past. I know people are like, "Oh, we could get more." That was my goal from the start of the season. This team is a one-win playoff team at least. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting because obviously Denver just got almost 500 yards from Jameis Winston hung on them.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, oh well, we've already played Denver. Denver knows us. Actually, no, because we had Justin Fields playing against Denver. We did not have Russell Wilson playing in that game, and I think our offense is it's pretty safe to say is drastically different right now with Russ at quarterback than it was with Justin Fields. Not that it's it is better for sure in a lot of different ways, but just the passing game being much much more of a threat, and you see a team like them getting torched in the pass game, you would think that favors us as well, right? Like, I mean, they've taken their beating on their defensive side of the ball injury wise too in Denver. They've lost some pieces.
I think so. But also remember at the end of that game when we beat Denver, Justin Fields gave the game ball to Russell Wilson, and he didn't even
Yeah.
play in that game. So imagine this
Yeah.
team if they got a chance, and the city about being behind them after watching everything and hearing how everybody like, oh, he's nothing, and to see what could happen, man, you want to talk about if the NFL was rigged, and it isn't. If it was scripted, that's the script you'd write for that first week. Let Baltimore play San Diego, or somehow manage to figure that one out.
Yeah.
You'd want Pittsburgh to play Denver in that first round.
I can only imagine the memes of Sean Payton getting beat by Russell Wilson after they gave up $38 million to pay him to play for Pittsburgh and then
That
get beat by him in the playoffs.
got beat by a guy. You paid the guy to beat you. I think
Yeah,
that's
that'd be
straight out of
pretty.
a Will Ferrell comedy right there. Paying a guy to beat you.
That is pretty good. I think that'd be awesome. Um, So just a few things to kind of touch on here before we wrap up today. Injuries. Corey Trice still is not officially back on the roster, but he's practicing in full. Alex Highsmith, there's no doubt he's playing. He's back. Montravius Adams, I think he's definitely going to be another guy. He's getting back off IR. I think he's so underrated, man. I love Montravius Adams. How do you feel about him?
I thought he was we took him off the Saints practice squad, didn't we, when we got him?
Yes. Yep.
I was happy when we got him. I think people were down on him for a year or so because he wasn't just, this defensive tackle that everybody wants. But I loved him. I think he's serviceable. I think he's great out there. I think him and the rotation. The only bad thing is it hurts my name because that means Lowry probably doesn't get on the field again. And at least I got to hear my name a couple times in the Steelers. So
it's a good one. I like it. I love Montravius Adams. I'll be honest with you. I think he's a really good backup, man, for the position he plays. And we don't have a true nose tackle behind Keanu Benton. Even just having a second guy in that position right now is massive because, listen, your boy Lowry, like, he's played in the 3-4 for a long time in Green Bay, but he is not a nose tackle. And a couple times I've seen him in there trying to play nose tackle. It's ugly. He's not built for that. I think when he was a little bit more athletic in his younger years, then he was much better suited as that 3 tech. But man, I love Montravius Adams, man. He was such a great pickup.
I understand that completely. I was just happy to hear Lowry blocked a kick. Lowry got a sack. I'm like, I'm good. I got my jersey now. I can honestly be like, no, I didn't get my jersey because my name was on it. I got an actual player. But somebody posted a question, who would you rather have back on, if you could, AB in his prime or Troy in his prime? No, man, I want Casey Hampton back in his prime, man. We need a nose tackle on a 4th and 1. Have you seen the tush push? So if we could get Montavis back, anything that can help. Yeah, Hampton would. Man, I would love to see the tush push against Casey Hampton, see what would have happened.
Jason Kelce and Casey Hampton one up on each other. That'd have been amazing.
Man, they don't make nose tackles like those guys anymore. That generation is no longer playing football.
No, that that kid from Kentucky, man, he's a big boy. I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. He's a big draft prospect. He was getting mocked to I don't pay attention to mock drafts at this time of year, but he was getting mocked to the Steelers quite a bit there for a little bit, and then they kind of flipped to like now Pittsburgh needs the wide receiver. So, but I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. But he's a pretty hefty boy. He's about 330, 340, 330 plus, somewhere in there. But
he's like 6 feet and nothing, and 330, and nobody moved him, man. It was Now we get to that 4th and 1. I'm like, just let him have the yard and let's go to first down.
Yeah, let's try to get him behind the sticks again.
Yeah.
I saw Calvin Austin was practicing again a little bit in limited participation.
Guardian.
I don't know if he's going to get cleared or not. That's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on because if he can't go, you might be looking at either Scotty Miller getting a helmet and doing the punt return duties, or maybe Jamal Agnew stepping in.
I'm torn because I haven't seen it as a receiver like that. Like we've at least seen Scotty Miller in the offense. From a punt return aspect, I'd rather see Agnew out there.
I wonder if the team would entertain the idea of maybe putting Agnew in and kind of using him as that last receiver on the depth chart and not actually playing him in the slot. Maybe moving Van Jefferson inside and having Mike Williams play more outside. Because Van's been a slot receiver, but he's been a slot receiver in Arthur Smith's offense in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would even entertain that or not.
Or maybe just keep Skarkowski out there and let him do all the dirty work, and I'm okay with that. Also, I forgot on Cody Trice, they have to activate him before practice tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Otherwise,
yeah. This is it. This is the deadline.
yep.
I hope they bring him back because I actually like Corey Trice. I know he's been injury prone. I know he's had his issues, but when he's played, he's been good. He's been
Yep.
and I feel much better about having him on the field right now than I would a guy like James Pierre, especially on that outside. I know you can slide Sutton outside if you had to, and let Beanie Bishop be your inside guy. But I don't know. That's another thing we really didn't talk about. We got a few minutes here. What did you think about Beanie Bishop maybe not getting? What do you have?
Very
Less than
few.
20 snaps. I mean, it was like 15, maybe.
Yeah.
Did he even have 15?
I thought it was even less than that, but yeah.
6.
Well, they said that it was because of the matchups and everything, and Bishop will get more playing time down the road. I think it's interesting that you got a guy that had a couple of big plays early on, and then you kind of got cleared. Kind of seems like they, Tomlin, and you can knock me all you want, but this is one of my criticism of Tomlin. If you're a Tomlin guy, you're a Tomlin guy, and you get that helmet right off the bat. And I feel that's the case with Sutton right now, is that as soon as Sutton was able to play again, it was like, all right, you're out there. And the detriment to Bishop. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens this week in Cleveland, because if Jerry Jeudy is being locked up on by JPJ, and you got Njoku running around, and you got Tillman, who might all of a sudden, he didn't play this past week. If he plays this week, I just want somebody to cover him. And if Sutton's out there, I hope he holds up. Otherwise, I want Bishop out there.
Yeah. Tillman played against us, though, right? He played. That's the game he got hurt.
Yep.
He got hurt on that deep ball where he ended up fumbling, I think. I think it was we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be interesting to me how they utilize it. I feel like it's going to flip back more to maybe a 50-50 type split. Beanie was playing so well that I don't want to take him completely out of the picture. I get what Tomlin was saying. I think they were trying to confuse Joe Burrow with the coverages, and it didn't work. So I don't know.
I don't think it worked at all. Joe Burrow did not seem very confused about the coverage.
No, he seemed like as long as he could get away from the pass rush, he was probably going to complete the pass. It was not slowing down.
He had to earn his bonus to get his next Batmobile.
Yes, for sure. That's about all that I had for us to talk about. Did you have anything you wanted to go over before we wrap up?
The only thing else I wanted to add would be after the game with Pickens and JPJ, when they both were basically, it's the ref's fault. They're trying to change the game. And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, even though they might have thought that way. And I'm not saying that's incorrect for them to think that way. I would have still liked to have heard them like, you know what, it is what it is. They made the calls. I have to understand that during the game, I got to do this. I would have liked a little bit of that. So both of them are young. I'm hoping that they learn from that, just because it's kind of like the thing that happened in Jacksonville and Texans, where the Texans all are like, well, not our fault. It's all Jacksonville's fault. It's like, just take responsibility, man. Just even if you don't believe it, just at least say, hey, you know what? Understandable. We might not agree with it, but we'll work on it. That's it. That's all. I'm glad that Tomlin and some of the players said what they said. I'm sure George heard the words. I'm sure he'll fix it. I don't know if JPJ is going to stop all of a sudden grabbing people. I don't see that happening. So
he said in the locker room, I think yesterday, that he's not going to change the way he plays, and he said Tomlin asked him not to. I mean, it is what it is, I guess. But I was with you when you said this earlier. Like, if as a player you have to understand the way the refs call in the game, and you have to adjust to it. Like, it's just the way it goes. Every ref's different. Every crew's different. Once you understand what their pattern is for the day, you've got to make adjustments. So,
yep.
All right.
If they're calling it tight, you got to let it tight. If they're letting you play, then go right ahead and do whatever you want to irritate the wide receiver.
Totally agree. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming back on. For anybody watching this back, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, so that we can keep doing this thing. Lowry, I'm sure we'll get together. We'll do a pregame show here sometime soon,
All
and
right.
we'll work out the details of that.
Cool. Looking forward
Thanks
to
for
it, man.
coming back on.
Asta.
See ya.